Welcome to Stitching Tales, a podcast about all things sewing and what it's really like to run a sewing business. I am Johanna from The Last Stitch.
And I am Malena Järpe from Hazel Henna Patterns.
And in today's episode, we're going to go back in time and maybe look forward, which is how to sew as a beginner and wanting to expand your sewing skills. And I think also what we're talking about today could be also useful for those of you that are more intermediate and want to move into more advanced projects. So we're going to do like an overview of all the things that we feel are good to know. Is it good to be overly ambitious and jump into head first into a more difficult project, or do you should be more gradual? What are good fabrics to use when you're starting out compared to when you get a little bit more advanced? And well, all these things I think is going to be exciting. But first of all, we're going to do a little bit of an update, right, Malena? Because when we are recording this episode, we are just a few days before you are releasing your new pattern, right?
Yes, finally! It's been a long time coming, this one. It is the BILBERRY top. I'm actually, if you're watching the YouTube video, I'm actually wearing it right now. If you see it, I was thinking about the Zoom era when, we don't meet maybe up in reality so much more. This is a great top for when you're working from home. It has a nice details on the top, on the screen, so to say.
Yeah.
So it is, and this is maybe not a beginner pattern. It's more the next level pattern. If you wanna, if you feel confident beginner, then this is a great pattern for you, I would say. It's for jersey fabric. It has like an open neckline, so it has a little bit of like a color detailing here. It has a pleat also in the front. I'm not gonna stand up now. And it also is available in D cup and B cup. At the moment, I'm wearing the D cup version, so that means it has a cut line at the front that gives a little bit extra shape to the bust, extra width, extra length, and it also is a little bit more shaped in the waist as well, both at front and back. And the B cup version, it doesn't have any cut lines then, so that it has less shape to it basically. And B cup and D cup in all sizes from. And it's in sizes, European sizes 32 to 56. I think that, US, I forgot to check it. I think it is up to 24, I think.
20, yeah. I think it's from 0, I think, to 20, 22, 24. I mean, it's so difficult.
Yeah, I think it's
still struggle. Sorry about this.
I should remember this.
US listeners. And I know there are plenty of you out there, and we do try our best to remember all the conversions from metric to imperial measurements and the different sizing systems, but it's so hard sometimes.
It is tricky.
When we record an episode, I think we're gonna I'm gonna post on my like computer screen to have a note just handy for that reference because we keep mixing the sizing up between European and US sizes. I think that's going to be like a good idea to have that little handy.
Yeah, that might be a smart thing.
Sorry. We try our best, and we also know sometimes that we mess it up when we're trying to convert between metrics and inches as well, but we do our best. And I just want to say you do a really nice job, but I also want to describe, if you're not watching the video version, what Malena is wearing is a beautiful like folded up colored blouse. I think the jersey fabric is in a greenish, like slightly gray greenish tone with beautiful little dots. And you can see the seam line, as you say, in the middle, it runs through. So the folded up color and that shaped seam in the front, it looks very, very elegant. As you say, it's a very Zoom friendly look because it's way more interesting than a regular t-shirt. But I can imagine that it's just as comfortable as wearing a regular t-shirt. So it's the best of both worlds, I think, in the way it looks. It looks really, really fantastic. And of course, we're going to post photos on our Instagram account, Stitching Tales, too, if you're not watching the video version, which I know a lot of you are listening. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful blouse, and I'm so excited to hear about the launch happenings.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, it's a little bit more relaxed fit, so it's not tight fitted at all, and it has like a dropped shoulder, so it has like a sleeve cuff ending. So it's a really comfortable wear. So yeah, looking forward to the launch. And for you listener, I have a discount code that I will have like a launch sale until Sunday. So if you use the code podcast20, you will get 20% off on this pattern, and you can find it on my Etsy website. We will add links to that for sure. So yeah, but the discount launch only until Sunday, so make sure to grab it if you want.
Yeah, so nice. And we're going to post that information as well in the show notes of this episode as well. So you can have access to this very exclusive podcast offering. That's why, another reason why you should definitely tune into our podcast. We do like to do some special offers sometimes for our dear listeners and viewers that you won't find anywhere else. So yeah, finally, so excited, very, very excited.
Finally.
It's been a long time coming, right?
Yeah, I think over 4 years now. So yeah.
Awesome.
It's finally launch day. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a bit envious. I love that kind of launch feeling because you put so much work behind the scenes, and sometimes it feels like it will never be finished. And then one of those days it's suddenly there, and all the pieces are falling together. And I mean, it's a thrill, and I wish I was able to launch more sewing patterns, but maybe in the future there will definitely be more sewing patterns coming. I have not been so obviously now, if you follow, you know that I'm working full time right now on the Last Stitch. So the last few days I've been busy updating my jeans sewing course, which I released I think it was in February of this year. I started, I think, with around 50 lessons, but sewing jeans, you can always dive more into this topic. So I've been filming even more lessons this week, and it's been really nice, actually. I thought a little bit before how it's going to be so much work, but it turned out it wasn't too exhausting. So I've been filming a tutorial for how to sew a button fly on jeans, and more tutorials on how to sew belt loops, a more professional method, and also instructions for how to draft a curved waistband if your waistband is only rectangular on the jeans pattern that you're sewing, because obviously a good benefit of having curved waistband, which we have talked about in a previous episode as well, is that if the jeans hit on a part where you're a little bit more curved, for instance, below the natural waist, or if your body isn't that straight, it usually fits way better to use a curved waistband, because a rectangular waistband, you will probably run in some gaping. I think it's pretty hard, right, Malena, to get a
I would say
nice fitting.
like 90% of the time I would always prefer a curved waistband compared to a straight one. So yeah, it is to avoid the gaping. Like the bottom of the waistband might fit nicely, but it's standing up the upper part if you have a rectangular. If it is exactly in your waist, then maybe no. But I mean, it's not that often that they sit exactly at your waist. Usually it's a little bit lower. So you need that kind of a curved waistband to get a really nice fit.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, and if you already have my course, then in Mastery, thank you. And this update will be included if you already paid for the course. So you can grab it now and you will get those updates. I think I'm going to roll them out in September. I just need to, all the editing, I mean, which always takes forever, but at least all the filming is done now. So that's a good starting point. So it's going to be updated, I think, in the fall.
You're going to have like a little relaunch then.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. And we're definitely going to talk more about jeans making in future podcasts as well, because it's a topic I feel really passionate about. So if you are game, Malena, I'd love to talk more about jeans making in the future. So that's a little bit of an update, right? In our sewing business life. I mean, we are keep chugging along, and we have lots of exciting things to look forward to, and we're definitely going to keep you in the loop if you want to know more about what it's like to run a sewing business. But let's talk about today's topic then. How to level up your sewing skills, regardless if you're a beginner or more intermediate and looking to become more advanced and learning more techniques. And so, Malena, do you want to start?
Yeah, well, I want to start with saying that, yeah, hot topic, like how to improve. And we always, I think we are like bombarded with like how to improve yourself, what to do better, da 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 da. It's
Yeah.
like, if this is your hobby, this should be for pleasure only, your own pleasure. It should be joyful. If you don't want to change anything, don't. You can stay in your lane, in your comfort zone, 100%. Do whatever feels right to you. Some people, here is like knowing yourself a little bit, like what triggers you in the positive way. Is it like problem solving? Is it advancing things? Or if it is perfecting what you already know? Like you choose obviously yourself what you wanna, how you wanna do. It's your hobby. So just want to throw that out there. Like no
Yeah.
pressure
Good.
to you have to advance. Like no, you can do absolutely whatever you want to do. If it is your hobby, it should be just enjoyable for yourself. But of course, we have a couple of tips.
Of
Of
course,
course.
because we know a lot of you are also ambitious and curious, and I think that's one of the point as well. It's not, as you say, Malena, we shouldn't put too much pressure on ourselves and having to feel, oh, we have to be our best selves in everything. I mean, scrap that mindset. Honestly, I'm so sick of it, and I think we're definitely going to reevaluate those kind of sayings. I'm totally with you, but of course, sometimes we do want to discover new things and try out new techniques and perhaps figure out better ways of doing things. So it's not bad to be curious. I would say it's more
No,
to be
and yeah,
curious, right?
yeah.
Exactly. That's probably the mindset that we should have. And also, do not be afraid of failing, or at least things were not working out, because as we're definitely going to talk about in this episode, there's a lot of benefits of trying out things that doesn't work out the way you wanted it to. And I think we all have those stories to share as well. So yeah, so where do we going to start on this
Yeah,
pretty
well, I mean, the
broad
first,
topic?
the basic,
Mm,
a little bit boring, but know your machines or
totally.
machine if you have one. Um, you have to know how to rethread it, how to all the settings. Maybe look in that instruction book, like the manual, how to, because all machines are different. Just because you know one type of machine, the other one might be a little bit different. So yeah, super boring advice, but you kind of need to know your equipment to be able to handle them correctly. And you don't have to rethread an overlocker from scratch if you are using a different color. You can just, I mean, there are tips and tricks here how to do it. Like tie them with the new,
Yeah.
cut off the old thread, tie the new thread to the old thread, and just pull it through the machine. Things like that. Like you don't have to do it from scratch every single time. But yeah, know your equipment. I would say that's the first recommendation.
Yeah, totally. And also, there's always a debate, how much should you invest? I think that's a tricky question. I mean, if you're starting out, or maybe you're thinking about if your equipment isn't up to par for the kind of things you want to do, I think that's such a tricky thing, because obviously, when you start sewing, you have no idea if this is going to be a lifelong interest of yours or it's a passing fad. Because I think we have those, I mean, I think everyone has, maybe bought like a road bike or golfing clubs, or what do you call it, or something else that you feel like, oh, this is going to be my new thing. And then a year later, maybe it was fun for a while, and then you have this equipment collecting dust, basically. So I think that is probably one of those decisions that, as a fairly new sewer, that you might struggle a little bit with. Should I buy that good sewing machine? Or I mean, how, or should I buy the cheap sewing machine first and see how it works out? So, what are your thoughts about that topic? Because I think that's one of those tricky things to think about.
Yeah, and also, I mean, there are different sewing machines, regular
Mm,
sewing machine, the overlock, the cover lock, where to start.
mm,
But I would rather invest in one great sewing machine, a
mm,
regular home sewing machine, I would start with. Um, because working with a machine that is not really working properly, that's going to create so much frustrations.
mm.
So rather spend a little bit more on one thing compared to buying two that are pretty cheap. If you have the opportunity to visit like a sewing fair or like a store where you can actually try the machine, I mean, obviously
Mm.
that is the best thing, because then you can really get a feeling of how the machine is working. Always recommend that, but if you can't, yeah, it is taking a chance a little bit. um, but I mean, we are hardcore fans of Bernina.
Yep.
You can't really go wrong with the Bernina machine.
No, definitely. I think Bernina and Baby Locks are probably, in my opinion, two of the most reliable brands, at least in my experience. And yeah, definitely, I have a, and they also have really resilient. I mean, because that's also an alternative. For instance, my Bernina, I have a regular sewing machine, a Bernina, but it's from 1989. So I didn't pay full price. I bought it secondhand, maybe about 15 years ago or something like that, and still works like a charm. I service it maybe every 3 years or something like that, and that's just fine for me. So, and to bring out that point, because there is a sticker shock to good sewing machines, right? So, in my opinion, I totally agree with you. And so, but one option could, of course, to get a used sewing machine, to start with that. And the good thing about used sewing machines is that it's a pretty good secondhand value. So there isn't much. If you buy a secondhand sewing machine and you realize that you want to upgrade or sell it to a more advanced machine, selling it, you would usually get back the money, which is a really nice thing. And I actually, my Bernina 1230 from 89, when I last serviced it, the mechanic said that it was actually more valuable now than when I paid for it, back in, I think, 2010. So it's actually increased in value, which is a great thing. And another thing, of course, getting, for instance, a new Bernina, it comes with a price tag. But I would also argue that if you realize that sewing isn't for you, which not that I understand that mindset, but I'm
It
sure
can happen.
it can happen. We all have a different things that we enjoy. Again, a good quality sewing machine will have a much better secondhand value than a cheap sewing machine if you get a new one, which or no name or or the lower end of some of these sewing machine brands. So if you have the money, it's probably, I would say, generally speaking, it's go for quality. I mean, buy the best you can afford. That's probably the best advice, I think,
Yeah. And
because
you really
in the
don't need,
end,
when it comes to machines, like, you don't need the latest version at all.
no,
Like, I mean, the sewing machine that we used in school that I was taught on, they were Beninas, but they didn't have like this electronical display or anything. They were like literally like, not screw, but what do you call it? Like things that you increase
yeah, like a
the
knob,
length
like
and
knob,
width.
I think
Yeah,
it's
knobs
called.
that you turned
Yeah,
to increase the length
exactly.
of the stitch or the width,
Mm.
if you were sewing straight or zigzag. And you had like a couple of different like fancy what do stitches.
Mm.
You can do so much with those. Usually when you have like more fancy machine, like 90% of those flashy things, you're not going to use it
Right.
anyway. So
No.
you can really like do the most basic kind of a machine. You get so far with that, as long as it's good quality, like it doesn't mess up the threads and those kind of things. So yeah, it is a good thing to invest, but you don't need to be flashy about it.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. And I think what we'll also talk about is the fact that, the machines that are specialized in one thing are, usually the best one. So for instance, maybe your sewing machine has a lot of, your regular sewing machine has a lot of, stitches, more advanced stitches for sewing with knits. When you eventually, having a serger overlocker is going to be a better option than sewing knits with a regular sewing machine, especially if you're working with stretch and knit. So realistically, you need a reliable sewing machine that can do the basic stitches, because that's where it excels, and all the other things. Well, I think the only I really like, and that's why I like Benina as well, and that's also the reason why I switched to Benina, is that it sews really beautiful buttonholes and automatic buttonholes, and that is a stress for a lot of us sewing buttonholes. So having a machine that does that well, if you're into doing shirts and waistbands and things like that, yeah, it's probably a good idea to, if it's one special stitch, I think it excels. I think buttonholes is one of those that actually matters, in my opinion.
Yeah,
And also
yeah.
being able to sew over thicker layers, because I think a lot of those cheap machines are a little bit weak in that area as well, and you don't want to end up with bad feeding and skip stitches and things, just because it's not strong enough, the motor isn't strong enough.
Yeah, yeah, no, so true. And of course, I mean, use always the right equipment for like the right needle, depending on your fabric, the right kind of thread, also depending on your sewing project, and all those things. Like having having a good foundation is like so important for it to be enjoyable. Because if it is a hassle to just sew a regular seam, it's not going to be enjoyable, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I would say there, start with the basic, learn your machine, learn your equipment, basically.
Yeah, good advice. So what is next to think about when you're looking into leveling up your skills and being a bit more ambitious?
Well, I think, I mean, starting with realistic expectations, start with beginner friendly both patterns and fabrics.
Yeah.
Because if you are jumping into the deep end your first time, it is gonna be tricky. It is gonna be overwhelming. It is gonna be tough. So start with easy project. It doesn't have to be like a duvet cover, tote bag, those kind of things. Tote bag, I would find kind of enjoyable to sew. I would, no, I would stop sewing if I started with a duvet cover. That to me is boring. I don't want to do that. So no, I mean, obviously you need to start with a project that you are gonna enjoy the end result of as well.
Totally.
We of course enjoy our knitted fabrics. So if you want to try knitted fabric, start with maybe a little bit sturdier fabric like cotton, maybe 96% cotton, 4% elastin, lycra in it. That's a really good, like, stable first, like, so versatile fabric as well. But it is pretty easy to work with because it has that, since it has elast on it, it has better recovery, easier to work with. And start with a t-shirt. Maybe also a more simple fit. Usually, like for t-shirts, a tight fitted or an oversized fitted are a little bit easier to fit. Those kind of relaxed fit, then you have no room to hide your fitting errors, so to speak. If it is really tight, it's a little bit easier to get away if there are any fitting issues. And if it's oversized, it's again also a little bit relaxed fit. Like, you get by with if it's not supposed to be figure tight anyway. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit if you have an easier fit project, you're not gonna have to think about the fit that much, so you can just focus on the sewing from the beginning. So that would I say,
Yeah.
start with easy project. And for woven, 100% cotton, linen fabric, those are usually really nice fabric to sew with. And again, start with a suitable pattern for that, like a pull-on trouser that has elastic in the waist, or a more relaxed fitted upper garment. Like, start with both, should be easy to work with, both the
Both
pattern
should be
and the
easy,
fabric.
absolutely. Yeah. So I think skipping a complex waistband and complex pocket solutions when you're making a pair of pants, and also maybe not go for the collar and the collar stand and the placket and the buttonhole for your first product. And there are lots of nice woven, I guess you could call them almost like woven t-shirts that are quite a little bit, as you say, also a little bit oversized. So the only thing you need to figure out is getting the neckline right, and usually there's a facing or one of those narrow bias tape or something like that on the inside. So it's very easy actually to be successful with it without having that many like more advanced skills. And I agree with you on you saying 100% cotton. That's probably the easiest fabric to sew with. And the good part, you have so many options. I mean, you have everything from twill to like beautiful cotton shirting and cotton lawn, so we can get lots of colors and prints. And you can, so a way, especially if you're a little bit newer, you can be adventurous with the fabrics and the colors and the prints, so you will still get a feeling of a wow thing without having to confuse yourself with too many details. And just getting that feel for how to handle a fabric and an understanding. I mean, basically learn how to sew straight, for instance. I mean, it is a little bit tricky in the beginning because I see that with my kids, because they I've taught them a little bit to sew, and when they're hemming and things like that, when they're hemming their pants, and I see that it's a little bit of a struggle getting it right. And so I mean that's where you train your motor skills basically, because you cannot expect to be able to sew everything straight, especially if the fabric is a little bit tricky to handle. So I think doing those things, and also getting, and I guess also I think the reward system needs its like injection. And if you don't tackle a too complex project, and it's also end up something that you love to wear, for instance, I mean, maybe do like elastic waist linen pants, for instance, without too many. You can do perhaps front pockets, but nothing back
or even
pockets.
A skirt, even more.
Or even skirt, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
with gathers or straight or A-line. And you end up wearing it because it fits nicely, it has your personality, it's an expression of your creativity. That is such an encouraging like feeling that will motivate you to keep on sewing. Whereas maybe if you tackle a too ambitious project, you might feel a little bit discouraged, and and then the sewing machine might end up collecting dust in a corner. So I think you should be you bring us a good point as well, that sew something that you really want to have. So it's not, I would never say, oh, because I think that what was like when we had home economics, because you had this, I think I made it first like a patchwork cushion, and then maybe moved on to a tote bag, and then maybe elastic waist skirt. So, I mean, I understand the thought process behind that you have this step by step, but the problem is that it doesn't maybe stimulate you as much because you're just doing it, and then you have this patchwork cushion that you don't really like. You have to give it away to some relative.
Yeah, so, I mean, you have to enjoy the end result as well, of course.
Exactly. Get also the your creative side also needs watering, even if you're a beginner, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some patterns that I haven't sewn them myself, but what I've heard really beginners friendly, Tilly and the Buttons has a lot of not just patterns but also sewing books that you also can borrow from your library usually. And Helen's Closets also have like a lot of great beginner friendly patterns. So maybe also start with a pattern that is like beginner verified, like this is how do you say, maybe someone who is a little bit bigger in the sewing community that has like the stamp of approval, like this is several people have said that yes, it is great for the beginners, because the quality might vary, and it may be not just be you, it might actually be the pattern that has a little bit of issues. So you want to have that verified that yes, this this is a good place to start.
Absolutely. And usually those when you mentioned, and they usually have nice sew alongs as well. And sometimes you can find videos as well showing techniques for that pattern. I mean, it's basically like a full service situation there. So I totally agree with you. Getting a more reliable is probably very helpful compared to the more basic sewing instructions that some pattern companies have, which is I think is a little bit more suited if you're more familiar with basic sewing techniques. I agree with you. So there, I mean, it's never been easier to be a beginner in the world than it is these days. I mean, compared to when you and I started sewing, I mean, and the lack of information, it's amazing that we kept on sewing because we did not have any of these resources back then. I mean, for instance, I used mostly Burda style magazine sewing patterns, and back then they have pretty much zero illustrated instructions, so it's just text, which is sew all the pieces together, and then you're done. So like,
And here again,
so
like
the
you,
color stand,
yeah,
like
and
what?
like what triggers you in a positive way? Is it that you want to know exactly how to do it before you actually start, and you want to read or you want to watch YouTube, or you are the kind of a person who is like, I don't give a about sewing instructions. I want to try it out myself. Well, I mean, do that then.
Mm,
It's like follow your own kind of
absolutely.
learning. Then it's going to be much more pleasant for you compared to if you have to. You are supposed to do it like this. If you don't like that one, don't do it. So do
Yeah.
whatever suits you, obviously.
And one thing, because we talked a little bit about how ambitious or how far outside your skill level or your comfort zone you should go, and I was definitely one of those because I started sewing really in earnest when I was a teenager, and as I just mentioned, the resources were scant at best back that was in the 80s for reference, and so I dived into making a jacket with a lapel and like shirts with a collar stand and a collar, um, buttonholes, plackets, all those things. And I will say that I did struggle. I'm going to be honest. A lot of those projects never went into a wearable garment, but I think we all have different ways of learning. And in my case, I have noticed that I actually, if I do something and then realize that I don't have the skills, then it's easy for me to go back and think, okay, next time I'm gonna be more mindful and more, really following the steps, because then I already have, for instance, sewing with a collar, with a collar stand and a collar like a classical shirting. It's a little bit tricky if you're new to it. And so I struggled the first time when I did it with very little pre-knowledge, but it was easy. When I then decided to learn to do it the proper way, I had a reference because I knew how tricky it was. So in a way, it was actually helpful that I had a few less than successful projects for my learning, because I could have that previous experience and know how not to do it, and then be more keen to learn how to do it.
Yeah, and I mean sometimes ignorance is a bliss. Like
Yeah.
it could go well as well, and probably learn a lot by trying out different things and finding out new techniques and whatnot. So I mean, if you are ambitious and just want to try, I mean, go for it. Absolutely.
Mm. Absolutely, yeah. So, but if we are being a bit more systematic in our approach for leveling up, do you have any other advice that we should think about?
Yeah, I mean, advancing in a good pace as well. Like, if you have mastered a certain type of fabric and you know the easier beginner friendly patterns, maybe level up one thing. Try the same fabric but a more advanced pattern, or use the same pattern but more advanced sewing techniques. If you have woven, for example, you can try French seam or Hong Kong seam or something, other details, or add on a pocket that you want, and like do it one step at a time. But if you try all things like more advanced pattern with a more trickier fabric together with a lot more techniques, it might be overwhelming. So try like for each new project, maybe one thing, one more difficult thing to tackle. For example, if you have an easy sewing project, but the fabric is a little bit more on the slippery side, for example, or stretchier, or like it has its own mind. Even the easiest sewing project might be so tricky.
Totally.
For example, a bias skirt, sewing wise, it doesn't look that complicated. But usually, if you the fabric, I mean, it needs to be cut on the bias. Already, that is a little bit more, yeah, difficult to do properly. Not because it's difficult, but it's just fiddly fabric all over the place, and usually have a little bit more drapey fabrics. So it's just trickier to handle. So maybe take one step at a time. Maybe not all new things on your next sewing project.
Yeah, that's a very good advice. I mean, as you say, with slippery fabrics, for instance, if you're, ready to tackle maybe slippery silk fabrics or which we have talked about in previous episode, for instance, do not go for a blouse with a collar stand and a placket. I mean, as you say, maybe something simple like a drape top with a just a face neckline or just a little bit of a binding tape or something like that, and a narrow hem. It's as you say, it's so tricky just to handle the fabric. The same goes for bias skirt as well. I mean, the kind of fabric also that grows just by you looking at it, which is also the thing that happens when you cut on a bias, because you get wonderful drape, wonderful stretch, which is wonderful and also super annoying because the benefits of that kind of cut is also the massive drawbacks. So for instance, the skirt, getting the hem even, for instance, when you grow, you should let it hang and then hem it, for instance. And it's the same with if you're cutting a blouse on a bias as well, you might get a little bit of slanted hem unless you're careful. So definitely start with the
Bias
easiest
cutted
project.
garment. They might look simple,
Yeah.
but it is such a tricky thing to master. So don't be fooled and think that that's a beginner friendly project. No, that's kind of advanced.
Yeah, I can definitely see that now because we talked about fall trends in the last episode, and one trend we didn't mention, but I see a lot right now is the bias skirt, the satin bias cut skirt, usually in some kind of polyester fabric, obviously, but so it just has a simple elastic narrow waist and just a narrow hem, and it's like mid length. And I agree with you. From a beginner side, that seems like, that could probably be good starter projects. Like, no way. Because especially learning to hem on a bias and getting control over that, it's so tricky. And also because of the fit, because the drape will hang down. So even though you might look good when you cut it, because after it would hang down, it might not end up looking the way you kind of envision it when you started out. So that's one of those projects definitely that I think fits that bill, Malena. It looks simple, but not a beginner one.
No, so be very mindful. I would say what project to choose and what fabric also to choose. And I mean, I have a passion for t-shirts. A t-shirt can be so simple and so advanced depending on the fabric and fit and everything. So you can do like 100 different t-shirts, but get like completely different results based on choosing different patterns, fits, techniques, and different fabrics. Like I'm thinking of like a sequence t-shirt. How fabulous wouldn't that be?
Wow.
Be nice.
Yeah.
A
It
little
was
bit
so
more
nice.
oversized, dropped shoulders, maybe a little bit shorter. That it so still very advanced because of the fabric, but the fit and the sewing, like it in itself might not be that tricky. So you can really like play around and have your, if you have your patterns that you maybe have done some fitting adjustments and it really suits you, like use that pattern and maybe add on techniques instead, because then you won't have the struggle with fitting, because fitting is, I mean, as we all know, that's like a separate part. Sewing is one thing, but getting it to fit right, that's another headache
Yeah,
maybe sometimes.
totally. Yeah,
Yeah, and if you are
absolutely. And that's
usually, if you use, if the garment in store doesn't really fit you well, the chances are unfortunately that you probably are going to experience the same thing when you are sewing garments. So just have that in mind, that if you usually have fit issues with ready to wear garment, there are going to be those experiences when you sew it yourself as well. You can change that, of course, but you kind of need to expect that you kind of have to do those adjustments to get it to fit
yeah,
right. So just have that expectation that no, it's not going to magically fit you properly for the first time. Do a toile, a prototype, a test garment first to see if you need to fit, or if you are sewing with woven, so easy to have that extra wide seam allowance, so you have a little bit more give than to if you want to extend the width or something, that you are a little bit more flexible. So
yeah,
yeah, fitting is maybe the next how to advance your sewing
yeah,
level, is like getting
yeah.
properly fitted garment. That's a
Totally.
challenge as well.
And that makes me think, we have talked about this previously, but I think we're definitely going to do another episode in the future about, fitting for beginners. And of course, you should always also check out our book Fit for Knits, where we talk about this in a very easy, beginner friendly way. And it is tricky for sure. And that's also a good argument, even though it might seem a little bit boring, but is that once you figure out the fit for a certain garment, that, just do small style adaptations. For instance, as you say, you can change the pocket design, you can change the length, maybe you can change some things. And that's how I do a lot of sewing actually these days, that I have a good pants sloper for stretch fabric. I have a good jean sloper. I have a good blouse sloper. So I just do, but every time I do it, I do a little bit of changes. So in a couple of episodes back, I was wearing a new blouse that I made, and I made that pattern before, but instead of a puff sleeve with cuffs, not by design, but by happy accident, I ended up doing like a flutter sleeve instead with a narrow hem, and it looks like a completely different blouse then. And you could also like, if you have a blouse that fits well, you can do it without the collar and just a collar stand, for instance. So there are ways of repeating your patterns over and over, because fit is time consuming.
Yeah, it is.
So
Yeah, and
spend a lot of time on it. It's a good way of being able to repeat a successful pattern over and over once you figure it out.
yeah, and do, this is again boring tip, but yeah, do that prototype, do that test garment, and
Mm.
if it is techniques that are new, do it on scrap pieces of fabric, so you can actually practice on, if you have a welt pocket, jet pocket, whatever, buttonholes, whatever, do it first on scrap fabric, so you can actually practice how you are going to do it, so you don't end up ruining a fine garment, but just because of the sewing technique, technical details, it's not going to be able to, you're not going to be able to wear it. So practice before going on to the real garment. I know it's the most boring thing ever
The most
for
boring
me.
thing.
I hate to do those kind of things, but yeah, if it is tricky, it is worth it. And what I always do, even today, like I always test sew my machine with the same amount of layers of fabric that I'm going to use with the right fabric. I have always some scrap pieces that I'm like always laying like there when I do the project. I always, before I start sewing anything, I always try my machine first.
Mm.
You never know what's like if you put away your machine, and I have done these mistakes too often. And isn't it funny, whenever like I do test 95% of the time, 5% I don't do it. And it's always those 5% that something happens. Always.
Yeah,
Like,
no, always. I
what
don't
are the
know what it is.
chances?
It's
Come on.
yeah,
So
it's the
annoying.
is it that the Murphy's law or
Yeah,
something like that?
exactly.
If it
I'm
can
strong
goes,
believer in that.
yeah, it will. If it
Yeah,
can't
so
go wrong, it will. Yeah,
always try your machine. It's better to mess up on a scrap piece of fabric
yeah. This
compared
is
to a real
usually it
garment.
was a weird oversight. Like maybe you did something wrong with the threading or the thread jumped out. It's just such a
Yeah.
weird thing. I agree with you. It's so easy. You always get overconfident with those things, but I mean, yeah, sample, sample, sample. And also, if you're trying out new techniques, I think, which we always try to keep saying that message is that you don't have to think it's just one way of doing things. So, I mean, if you see a tutorial for sewing a welt pocket or a zipper for a pair of pants and you struggle a little bit, uh, there are several different methods for doing that. So just check out if you find a different tutorial, different approach. Maybe you will find a YouTube video, a sewing book, a tutorial on some blog or something like that. So don't feel discouraged if you are struggling with sewing a collar stand, for instance. Maybe you just need to try another method that works better for your mind and your motor skills. So I that's been very helpful for me that I've actually tried out different methods, and some are just easier for me than others. And I'm sure for others it's the opposite.
Yeah, and here I think um if you have been taught in a certain way, if you have gone to school, learn, like sometimes, I'm not saying everyone, but sometimes you might be a little bit more narrow minded, like this is how you are supposed to do it. But then if you're a beginner, it's like you can question things in such a, yeah, you, you might be a little bit more open minded, like why can't you do it in this way instead? And yeah,
Mm.
maybe it's true. Side note, I listened to, maybe you have listened to this as well, the podcast, How I Built This.
Yeah,
Um,
I love it. Love
yeah,
it.
it
Great tip
was,
if
I'm a
you
little
checked it
bit
out.
behind now,
Link.
so it was maybe, it's not the latest episode, but like 15, 20 episodes back. There was this guy in who hated that his shirt were so long, because you always, before, I mean, you always tucked in your shirt into your trousers when you wear it, but he didn't want to do it. He wanted to do, I think his brand is called Untuck It or something.
Mm.
I'm
Mm.
gonna give you a
I
link
haven't listened
to.
to that episode, but
Oh, you should do
yeah,
it. Yeah,
I should
definitely.
do it. I love when they do fashion stories. I mean,
Yeah,
they do that
yeah.
sometimes.
And
It's
this
so
guy, he's
interesting.
like
Yeah.
not from the fashion
Mm,
industry. But he had a problem. He didn't want to
mm,
tuck in his shirt, but there weren't any shirts available that if you have untucked it's too long. So
mm,
he was like trying to, okay, develop a new shirt that is untucked, which today is like, yeah, it is that, what, isn't that like, has it
yeah.
not been a
It's not
thing?
a
No,
thing.
but that
Yeah.
was not on trend before. And
Wow.
yeah, so he was kind of the guy who changed the industry for men's shirt. It was like, yeah, you can wear it untucked as well, or open up with a t-shirt underneath, this more casual look. It was such
Mm,
a fascinating episode from a guy who was not in the industry, and he struggled. He had to fight with the manufacturer to actually make this kind of a shirt, because that kind of shirt is much shorter than.
mm.
And they were like, no, this is not how we do it. This is not the, like, this is not in the fashion industry. Like, no. Well, he kind of changed the industry. So inspiring. It's like, I love that kind of a thing. Like, no, but you don't have to. Maybe it's a bad thing to have gone the regular route, learn a
Totally.
certain way. It's like,
Totally. Mm,
it doesn't have to be like that. And today is
mm.
like so obvious. Like, no, of course, shirts doesn't have to be a certain like you can have it different way, different wear, different, more casual look as well. It was just such an interesting episode. I was really like, mind blown a little bit.
Wow. Such an inspiring story, and I think such a great message to everyone that you don't have to do it in a specific way, and no one is going to judge you, and you have to. And also, I mean, a good thing now is that we have so much more access to information and tutorials and trying out things. So I think honestly, today, it I- if you don't have, if you're not able to go to school or something like that, take a course, I think it's easier to actually level up your sewing skills faster today than it was maybe 30 years ago, because you have all these different options or on how to do things, rather than back then. I think it was very strict. So for instance, if you check out all the sewing books, there's usually pretty much the exact same instructions. And while I'm a sucker for like vintage stuff, I will also say that a lot of older sewing instructions are a little bit overcomplicated and harkens back a little bit to hand sewing, for instance. So I can understand why you might feel a little bit overwhelmed by a lot of those instructions. Whereas if you look today, you make it more inspiration from industrial methods that are also a bit more efficient and can actually be a bit more easier for a lot of us to sew than those old school methods. That's like, oh, I mean, it's just overwhelming sometimes, I think, when you look at some instructions from back in the days.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a little bit different perspective, like tailoring and fast fashion, mass production, like both has its pros and cons. But as is always, I mean, you obviously can choose whatever method that works best for you and what you prefer to do. So it's not one way is both are right. It's just different ways of working. So yeah, you can choose whatever you want to do. And as you mentioned, books, great resources of learning how to do things. Libraries have I love our local library. They have, I mean, yeah, I visited so often. It has so many great books on any topic, hobby topic. Like you have so much knowledge there. And of course there are online classes if there is no local classes that you can meet up, which is also a great way of learning. Take a class, just as, it doesn't have to be a fashion school or anything, just like a meet up and sew with friends kind of style as well. But classes, of course, that's a classic way of learning new things, of course.
Absolutely, it just soak in the information and don't be afraid to experiment, for sure. Do you have some other suggestions, Malena, for leveling up
Yeah.
your skills?
No, but don't be afraid to try. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is that you fail. Hopefully, you learn something. But I mean, yeah, that's it. You lost maybe some material that you're not going to be able to
Yeah.
use. But I mean, it's not the end of the world. You can try it. You can try it again, and it is so much fun to when you actually come to like not realize, but when you can handle a new technique or something, it is so much
Yeah.
fun to do.
It's so much fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's addictive almost. I think that's probably one of the reasons, because I thought a lot about that. Why? Because as I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, I mean, sometimes you dive in. I think we all have had those ideas about hobbies that we thought we're going to get really sucked into, and then we end up not really following through. But both you and I, we have been sewing steadily since we were kids, basically, which is fascinating. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I love sewing, is the fact that you're always able to learn new things and expand your skills and try out new things. There are always different ways of expressing your creativity, and there's a technical component to it, and there's a creative component, and those things that are so nice that they really go together. And that's probably why, because I feel like I have so much to learn, and every year I learn new stuff, and I find different ways of doing things that I didn't think about. And that's also the nice thing about sewing similar things over and over again. Maybe it's a little bit boring, but that's practice is such an important way of getting better at. So it's just not, finding the right tutorial or having things like that, the right fabric. Practice is really important. So that is why, you have to keep on doing things in order to get maybe to feel comfortable with a certain technique. So don't be too hard on yourself if you feel like maybe you didn't turn out quite the way you wanted it, because no one I think has had that experience every single time. I mean, and of course, there's always a seam ripper.
So true. They exist for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's still heavily used in this household, I can assure you. So no shame in ripping and resewing. I do it all the time, all the time.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think your pattern, when you create a pattern, you aim for, I mean, they are beginner friendly, I would say, because you have such detailed instructions on every single step, so a beginner could sew them. But you aim
Mm,
for a little bit more intermediate,
yeah,
advanced sewists, right? Because you have quite a lot
right.
of no, you have details, more
Yeah,
detailed
I have
patterns.
details.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, if you're not familiar with my patterns, I make garment patterns made for knit fabrics, so far only knit fabrics. And what I do is just to say, I always had a little bit more complicated details, for instance, color, different sleeve solutions, maybe a gathered sleeve or pockets, darts on the
On your
pants,
leggings, for
even though they're
example,
made
they
for
have
knits.
more
And
detailed
also
pockets
the
and
leggings as well. They have pockets included in the waistband, so using either a zipper or another pocket solution. So yeah, it's trickier, and so the purpose of that I feel is if you are closing in on that intermediate, that's where my patterns come in. If you're really prepared to take it a little bit of next level, and for me, that's also the way I like to sew. I definitely feel like I'm not as stimulated by doing very simple patterns. For me to get my reward system going, I like to tackle slightly more intricate details. So that's how I approach my patterns as well. I mean, of the most thing is that I want them to look really good, but secondly, I also want them to encourage you as a sewer to try out a few new more techniques, and that you will not just get a beautiful garment, but also feel like you maybe learned a few new techniques when it comes to sewing with knits. So, and how do you feel about your pads, Malena? What's your thought process on the target audience and what you want to deliver?
well, so far, I would say all my patterns are very beginner friendly. For the jersey ones, I have, I mean, t-shirts and joggers. They are perfect for beginners, I would say. Um, and I also have the Malva T-shirt that you get for free if you sign up to my newsletter. So that is also a great, I mean, short sleeve T-shirt, super quick, easy make. If you want to try out sewing with the jersey or knitted fabric for the first time, so that one I can really recommend.
Yeah.
I also have two woven patterns for kids wear that are also very beginner friendly. But now with this BILBERRY top, it's a little bit more advanced. It's a little bit other details. So I do want to go into that a little bit more advanced patterns. But I think for myself, I kind of had to start with a beginner friendly pattern. Not that the patterns, no problems for me since I'm a professional pattern maker. This is what I do for a living. But just, for myself, the sewing instructions and all those, like how to do those in a clear way. I kind of had to start from the beginning as well,
Yeah.
creating them before I moved on to the more advanced things. But from now on, I do want to make a little bit more, elevated styles. So we'll see
Oh,
how it will go.
yes, that's really interesting. So we are, I think you're doing the journey along with the people that make your garments. So you can start with the easy one, and as you do more elevated garments, they can also elevate their sewing skills. So I think that's a really good way of approaching it. And I think one of the things that I think both you and I enjoy and what you've done with the BILBERRY top is that you elevate the style, but it's still easy to sew.
Yeah,
So
technically, it is
technically,
kind of, I mean, more or less the same difficulty as sewing a
mm,
regular t-shirt. A couple of other steps as well, but it's not like it's difficult technique or
mm,
something. It is very straightforward sewing. But yeah, you might need to read the instructions to actually know which step like to follow, because
Yeah.
it is a little bit different style compared to just a regular t-shirt. And if you want to
Mm.
just sew regular t-shirt, that is fine as well. Do whatever makes you happy, of course.
Yeah. Totally, totally. All right then. I think we covered pretty good. Maybe we should do a follow-up episode. Maybe you have even more ideas that we could talk about. And of course, if you're listeners and have more questions regarding this, we would love to know. You can either email us at stitchingtalespod@gmail.com, over our Instagram account, Stitching Tales Pod, or a YouTube channel, again, Stitching Tales Pod. So we'd love to hear more. And do you have any great beginner tips or things that you have found useful when it comes to like level up your sewing and learning new skills? Hopefully we encourage you to try out some new things, and it's always a good reminder to remind ourselves as well. A good way of approaching sewing. I sometimes feel that when we talk that I'm actually talking to myself a lot of the time, things that I need to remember.
Yeah, this is of course also our therapy session, so yes.
Yeah. Anyways, I also want to say good luck with your patent launch, Malena. I'm so excited, and we are definitely going to do a follow up on the patent launch as well. And also remember to hop on Malena's email list and get a special discount for this and to get updates on what's going on.
Thank you, thank you. Fingers crossed this will be done.
Yes, it will. It will. I know you. I know you. You're you always get things done in a very efficient manner, so it's very inspiring, and I have all the confidence in you, and I hope that your pattern is a wonderful success. And so we're gonna see more new patterns from you as well in the future, because that's something that you and I are both really, really, I guess we just want to put out more patterns, right? That's probably,
Of course,
yeah,
of
we are.
course.
Yes, yes, to figure out that little time thing.
Yeah. That little issue with the lack of time, yes.
Yeah, it's always an issue. All right then. Well, thank you so much for listening. I am Johanna Lundström.
And I am Malena Järpe. Bye bye.
Bye bye.